Hey guys, Zack here, and this is my review of Danny Phantom. Okay, so this episode, Public Enemies, is interesting. So essentially what the premise is Walker, if you remember Walker, he wants revenge against Danny for breaking out of his prison, and more specifically, causing a riot in his prison. He wants to get revenge on Danny for that. So the episode is about him kind of doing that, which, and here's the interesting thing. We'll get to that, but there's an interesting thing about this episode that'll come up. But in case, the episode opens up with of course, Walker assembling a, sending his ghost to round up the last of the inmates that have escaped from his prison. And it's this point where we're formally introduced to Walker's right-hand man, Bullet. And Bullet was not in the original episode where we met Walker, but he's implied to have worked with Walker for quite a while. But we never actually saw him, but he was apparently just in the background of the episode and we never saw him. So yeah, in Walker's introduction episode, we just never did. But in case Bullet, after capturing the last of the inmates alongside Walker's goons, then calls Walker and tells Walker that they've rounded up the last of the inmates, and Walker then proceeds to point out that no, there's still one more that they need to deal with. He goes on to explain how unfortunately he currently exists outside of his reach, at which point he comes to a door of solitary confinement and says that's what he needs this particular inmate for. At which point we are introduced to an inmate named Wulf, who is a wolf ghost, in keeping with the name, except spelled with a U instead of an O. But in case Wulf immediately tries to escape once his solitary cell has been opened, and several Walker's men do point out that he's trying to escape, and we do find out how he's able to escape and why Walker specifically wants him. As it turns out, Wulf has the ability to create ghost portals wherever and whenever he wants. Essentially, he uses his claws to cut a hole between the ghost zone and the human world, and can travel through them. And of course, Walker insists that he's not particularly worried that Wulf can do that, and immediately pulls out a remote, which reveals that Wulf has an electric shock collar around his neck, and admits that, and then proceeds to tell Wulf that he's not allowed to escape yet because he's got a job for him, and does proceed to explain if he can sniff out a particular inmate that he's looking for, and Wulf proceeds to do that. But then we also find out something interesting about Wulf, is that he speaks in Esperanto, which is, I don't know exactly what language it is, but he speaks in Esperanto, which means we can't understand him, but several characters within universe can. So yeah, we can kind of sort of infer what he's saying, but not 100%. But in case Wulf, from context, we learn that Wulf is apparently asking if Walker wants Walker to kill him, to kill Danny, but Walker then proceeds to add that no, he needs Danny alive for revenge, and specifically revealing that what his main goal ultimately is, pointing out that since Danny escaped his prison, he's going to make the world he escaped to his prison instead. But it does proceed to point out that in the meantime he does have a plan on how to do that. So he then proceeds to instruct Wulf to open a portal to the human world, which he then sends all of his minions through, and winds up becoming a massive pandemonium pretty much immediately. So and Danny, Tucker, and Sam see this, and Danny realizes Sam notes that she's never seen so many ghosts attack all at once. Well, Danny just remarks that he's going to need a bigger thermos. But in any case, with all of the ghosts running around, and that of course causes the entirety of Amity Park to go into a bit of a state of emergency. At which point we are introduced to the mayor of Amity Park, Mayor Montez, and Mayor Montez appears in a couple of episodes, but this is his only major role. So, yeah, he appears in a couple of episodes after that, but isn't, important overall after this. But, in case he then what we find out is that the main reason Mayor Montez is appearing in this episode is because, first and foremost, he's recognized the entire threats that, the whole ghosts invading from the ghost zone poses. So, of course, he immediately rallies everybody together. But also reveals that he also kind of has ulterior motives because he kind of wants to ingratiate himself to new voters, and so he's appeared at Casper High to kind of appeal to everybody and reveal his plan to keep everybody safe until the ghosts go away, and of course, it's this point where Principal Ishiyama with the mayor then proceeds to introduce a series of new protocols that are going to go in place until they can take care of the ghosts. First and foremost, he proceeds to reveal that ghosts are that everybody's going to be escorted to their homes. To and from their homes. He's also explaining how everybody is nobody is to interact with any of the ghosts and is to stay keep as big a distance as from everybody else. But and finally, he then proceeds to go on to explain how his main goal for all of this is to give everybody a 9 o'clock curfew so that everybody is safe in their homes by nightfall. And this, of course, these new demands cause a lot of people to complain and become upset. With Danny then proceeding to add, who would be stupid enough to actually implement these kind of changes and come up with them. At which point we find out exactly who is stupid enough to come up with those changes. As it turns out, in addition to that, Mayor Montez has also appointed Danny's parents to help rally a force to hunt the ghosts, which of course Danny winds up being very embarrassed about because obviously his parents are going to publicly embarrass him if they do this. But of course Jack and Maddie then proceed to declare everybody that it's going to be fine, that they're not going to let a single ghost slip through their fingers, and that so long as they're around, everybody is going to be safe. But of course it is at this point where Wulf suddenly appears in the auditorium and starts terrorizing everybody, and of course, everybody realizes in the panic. Sam and Tucker realize in the panic that Danny is likely going to be struggling a bit to figure out when exactly it is to go ghost. And of course, in the ensuing panic, everybody just kind of flees around. But it's this point where Walker then proceeds to reveal what his ultimate end goal is. He proceeds to spirit Principal Ishiyama. And then proceeds to tell everybody that he doesn't care if everybody knows that Wulf is there, but he wants everybody else to be hidden. And sure enough, they then proceed to do exactly that. As Danny is busy shape changing to face off against Wulf, everybody else winds up inspiriting a couple of people that Danny know. After Wulf sniffs them out, Bullet goes on to possess. Bullet goes on to inspirit Mayor Principal Ishiyama after Walker leaves. Walker then proceeds to go on to inspirit Dash, and from that point onward, Walker is in Dash's body. And meanwhile, Bullet just rallies the rest of the group ghosts to possess all of Danny's bullies and quote-unquote friends. The only real exception being Sam and Tucker, who get to safety before any of that can happen. And of course, Danny does quickly deal with Wulf and successfully manages to chase him off. But in the ensuing panic and chaos, Wulf gets defeated and chased off, but in the process, Walker is very clearly upset about the fact that Danny got away, but does point out that it'll be fine because they can continue to implement the next stages of his plan. At which point they then proceed to reveal what the next kind of stage of his plan is, and that they go on to possess everybody. Obviously, they go on to possess everybody that Danny knows. Obviously, Mr. Lancer, everybody else, and adding to that, they now are in a position where they can go send everybody to cause more problems for Danny. So Danny, of course, is trying to figure out what exactly it is he's supposed to do. But as Danny comes home, he's he's very frustrated about the whole idea with Walker's goons, pointing out that he doesn't know how to deal with that many people, with this many ghosts all at once, and he has no idea what exactly it is Walker is planning. But he does point out that he does need to figure it out, and fast. It's this point where Danny comes home to see all of the people that Walker and his goons have inspirited having joined up as a group with underneath Jack, and Jack is currently training them how to be amateur ghost hunters, which of course embarrasses Danny very thoroughly, and it's this point where Jazz kind of walks in as well, and kind of lampshades the idea that Danny should probably go to his room and be almost as if he's not there anywhere at all. But Jack is very insistent that Danny, join them and join in on all the fun. But Danny is insistent that he's not going to do that, and proceeds to once again run up to his room, like Jazz suggested, and also wording it exactly as she said, and proceeds to go up into his room so he can brainstorm some ideas on how to deal with the ghosts. And meanwhile, the group is currently not very sure what to do with the whole situation. But obviously, Jack is training Danny's enemies. That's not particularly great. But in any case, the next day, Jack and Manny show up in the Fenton RV, where everybody is escorted outside for lunch. And Jack and Manny then proceed to reveal that they have a piece of technology that is actually pretty useful. They can create their own ghost shields to defend people and keep them safe, obviously safe. But of course, Jack points out that the juice only has there's only about 15 minutes worth of juice for them to eat their lunch. So he tells everybody to chew thoroughly and quickly. And of course, while instead of not doing that, Danny proceeds to kind of talk shop, which he proceeds to reveal that they obviously needs to figure out what's going on with Walker and all of his goons, and obviously he's not entirely sure what all the ghosts are doing there, and he does need to figure out what exactly is going on with all of his enemies. But he does point out that in order to figure out what's going on, he needs to find the ghost that started it all, Wulf. And of course Tucker then proceeds to reveal that he doesn't think that Wulf is actually the enemy, which of course causes Danny to become a little confused and asks him to explain. And it's at this point where Tucker reveals that he actually knows Esperanto and kind of figured out that that's what Wulf has been speaking. He picks up on he also explains that the reason he knows it is that it was mostly an obscure language that was supposed to bridge people together and provide a common language, but now only nerds speak it. Which of course, since Tucker is kind of a nerd, obviously he knows what's talking about. And of course, while he admits that he doesn't fully understand what Wulf was saying during his encounter with Danny, he does admit that it seems like Wulf is scared. And sure enough, it's at this point where Wulf once again reappears, and then proceeds to demonstrate another ability he has, which is that his claws can also penetrate ghost shields, which of course makes it very easy for people to get into the ghost. He's essentially able to terrorize people on the campus of Casper High, even despite the ghost shield. And of course, it's this point where Bullet appears and reveals, and he points out that he's not going to be doing that. That he shouldn't really be doing that anymore. At which point he proceeds to pull out the button with the button that activates Wulf's shot collar. And when one of the guards openly tells Wulf that tells Bullet that he really shouldn't be doing that, pointing out that Walker told him not to. But Bullet merely declares that Walker isn't there to see him now, is he? But in case he then presses the button, which causes Wulf to kind of become shocked, and he starts fleeing. And Danny, before realizing that he didn't really get to fight him, but also realizes that Tucker may in fact have been right about Wulf, decides to go ghost and decides to hide behind a tree to go ghost, but quickly discovers that Jazz is hiding behind the same tree, and she makes a not so subtle claim that she kind of knows that Danny is going there to go ghost, but also claims that Danny clearly came there to hide as well, and decides to hide somewhere else. At which Danny notes is weird, but then decides that there's more pressing matters and goes ghost and goes to chase after Wulf, and quickly discovers that Walker's goons are in fact after Wulf, and points out that while Wulf is big, hairy, and a ghost, he also admits that if Walker's goons are after him, he probably isn't all that bad. At which point he then proceeds to use his abilities to chase Bullet and the rest of the ghosts off of Wulf. With Wulf, while we can't fully understand what he's saying, does seem to express his gratefulness to Danny, and Danny seems to kind of sort of understand some Esperanto because he also responds to the sentiment, and Wulf proceeds to lick him. And it's at this point where Jack then proceeds to pop out of the bushes, declaring that not to move and go anywhere because now he's going to catch them. But he winds up getting the Fenton ghost fisher tangled, and which is where I got the picture from. But he starts trying to untangle it, and it's at this point where Danny proceeds to reassure Wulf, pointing out that his father isn't much of a threat, and if it was his mom, they would be in a lot more bigger trouble. But it's at this point where he sees a dot on Wulf's head, and quickly realizes that his mother is hunting them. And realizing he needs to get Wulf out of there, he immediately chases everybody off, and it immediately gets them out of there. But then declares that they need to find safe place to hide Wulf. So for the time being, until they can figure out what's going on. So it's at this point where they proceed to where Danny and Danny tells Sam and Tucker to hide Wulf in Tucker's house where it's safe, and Tucker of course does it, and even though Sam isn't particularly happy about hiding Wulf there, pointing out that eventually Walker's goons are going to find them, but does point out in the meantime that they can figure out what exactly is going on. But it's this point where Tucker tries to ask Wulf in Esperanto where he tries to ask Wulf in Esperanto what exactly his Walker is trying to do and what his end game is, and Wulf proceeds to tell them in Esperanto. We know from context that Wulf knows that Walker wants to throw Danny in prison, but Walker obviously Tucker's Esperanto is a little bit rusty, so he doesn't fully understand what Wulf is trying to say. He gets up bits and pieces, and he's trying to work that out. But in any case, realizing that Wulf is now safe, then declares that then walks past the hallway trying to figure out what he's going to do, when he suddenly overhears a Walker and his overshadowing conspirators talking about their big plans for the town hall meeting, which of course Danny isn't entirely sure what's going on with that, but then decides to go into the room and figure it out. At which point, all of Walker's overshadowed people then proceed to corner him, and it's this point where Walker, in Dash's body, proceeds to grab him and reveals himself. And Danny is visibly shocked that Walker was hiding amongst them the entire time, but it's at this point where Walker reveals what his end goal is. That he admits there's all kinds of prisons, and that his end goal is to turn everybody in Amity Park against Danny, so that he of course is ultimately forced to hide and will eventually be begging for the safety of his prison. And with that, he then proceeds to repossess Dash, and at which point Danny realizes he needs to get to the safety of his house. And realizes because he realizes now what's going on. But he does wind up going ghost, and does try to fight off everybody that was chasing after him. And of course it's at this point where Danny, well, he does successfully fight everybody off, although he isn't entirely sure how to shake them. But of course there is also a really fun thing where the ghost inspiriting Paulina grabs him and tells him that now he's never going to get away from her. But Danny then proceeds to also make a joke about how he had been waiting all his life through puberty for a girl to say that, and now it's kind of gross. But he proceeds to fight Paulina off, and eventually Danny does winds up making it to his house, where he proceeds to activate his father's ghost shield, which does wind up meaning that the ghosts can't get inside his house anymore. but Walker points out that that'll work fine for his plans, pointing out that obviously he points out that because of that, Danny, of course, they can't get into Danny's house, but Danny also can't get out. And does point out that's the perfect opportunity to go into the next phase of his plan. At which point, he remarks that Wulf has seemingly outlived his usefulness. At which point, he pulls out the shot collar button and then proceeds to turn it on and break the remote. And this course causes Wulf to go into immense pain. Sam and Tucker quickly realize that obviously the collar is hurting him. Tucker realizes he needs to figure out a way to get the shock collar off. So he uses his PDA to hack into it, which short circuits Tucker's PDA as well as him, but it does result in Wulf's collar falling off. And Wulf, grateful about what happens, then leaves and jumps out the window. Well, Sam and Tucker are very confused as to whether or not they can trust him to do the right thing. But does point out that he probably hates Walker's goons just as much as Danny does, so he will probably be on their side. But in any case, it's at this point where we actually meet Tucker's parents, and they declare that they tell the two of them that the curfew has actually gone into effect because it's now 9 o'clock. And does tell them that for the time being that they're not going to be able to, they don't have time to walk Sam back to her house. So for the time being, they're just going to have a sleepover in the attic, which of course makes Sam very upset with Tucker and points out that she really wishes that next time they should have picked her house instead. But in case Danny, kind of a bit of a nervous wreck, then proceeds to pass out, while Walker then proceeds to get ready to put the next phase of his plan into action and switches possessed victims with bullets, and they have another ghost fill in their ranks, so Walker can go and continue the next part of his plan. But in case the next day, Danny proceeds to wake up. And he's obviously a little confused as to what transpired, pointing out that obviously he's still upset about the whole thing with Walker, but is happy that the ghost shield is still up. But is then surprised to see Sam and Tucker in his house, and then wonders what they're doing there, pointing out that the shield is up. But Tucker then proceeds to point out that it's a ghost shield and not a human shield, which means humans, they can get in and out no problem. But of course, at this point, Danny then proceeds to vent his frustration about what he's going on with Walker, pointing out that he obviously realizes what's going on, and that Walker is trying to box him in. He realizes essentially he needs to stop Walker's plan because obviously if Walker's hell-bent on turning the whole town against him. And if he succeeds, he's not going to be able to operate. He's not going to be operate as freely anymore as Danny Phantom. But and of course Sam and Tucker point out that it probably won't be that bad. But then they turn on the news and they discover that, and what they discover is that Mayor Montez is now declared that. First and foremost, he's declared that they've located the evil spirit that is the source of all their problems, and proceeds to show Danny in his ghost form. But also then proceeds to explain that he's going to be using his abilities to appoint Jack Fenton as head of security, as ghost security, so that he can fend off the ghosts. Which obviously Jack is not a very good ghost hunter, so that goes about as well as you'd expect. But in any case, but of course, we also see his eyes glow, which hints that he's actually Walker possessing him. And of course, Danny points out this is exactly what he's talking about, and points out that obviously Mayor Montez the now possessed Mayor Montez is going to cause them a lot of problems and headaches. So he realizes that in order to solve the problem, he's going to need to deal with Walker once and for all. So he proceeds to turn off his parents' ghost shield, shifts into his ghost mode, and proceeds to fly off to the town hall as Mayor Montez is in the middle of his meeting. And of course he then proceeds to confront everybody in the town hall, pointing out that he's not their enemy, and that the true enemy is trying to turn the whole town against him. But we find out that that's obviously Danny's parents do not listen to him, and an interesting thing. We do find out a bit of lore about what ghosts actually are, And Maddie hints that obviously, that interestingly, ghosts, despite obviously being based on real people, obviously we've established that there are ghosts with established real people and established lives, but apparently they are not actually like the spirits of the dead, according to Maddie. Apparently they're just ectoplasmic, ectoplasmic assemblages with the memories of people, meaning that essentially they were born, quote unquote, born when a person died, which is. And it's just, but probably explains why that probably explains the Chartman's quote-unquote statement on how ghosts are not real people. It's kind of implied in this episode, but also it's implied that they were real people at one point and then became ghosts. So, I don't know. I should mention, it's something rare that comes up in the episode, but, you know, doesn't really play into any of it. But, Danny, of course, quickly realizes that he needs to figure out how to do something, and does start using some of his ghost rays, pointing out that his parents are probably being possessed, and that the ghost rays should harmlessly pass the ghosts out of them. Of course, what we find out though is that they're not possessed at all. In fact, Walker never had his goons possess them. They're just been against ghosts since the beginning and have been working with Walker and his goons unwittingly. So, of course, this causes the entire town hall to panic. Well, Danny quickly realizes what he's done, but it's at this point where he goes to confront Walker and his goons. But he is actually phased through the floor and into the boiler room where all of Walker's enemies are waiting for him. And meanwhile, we find out that Jack and Maddie are going to realize they need to deal with it, so they start stockpiling all the weapons, but we find out that's obviously the reason why Jack and Maddie are a good team is because Jack understands that Maddie is better at ghost hunting than him. So he immediately decides to give her all the weapons and let her handle it. So and with that, she then proceeds to go to the basement. Meanwhile, all of Walker's goons then proceed to gang up on Danny and proceed to beat the shit out of him. But Danny eventually does wind up having enough and starts using his ghost rays to harmlessly pass the ghosts out of people, starting of course with Paulina. And Paulina is of course visibly confused as what's happened, but she eventually does put two and two together when she sees that Danny is fighting off all of Walker's goons, and concludes that what everybody has said about him is wrong and that he's actually a good ghost. And of course he does point out that yes, he is on their side and he is a good person. And does tell her to get out of there, which she does, at which point he proceeds to deal with the rest of Walker's goons, successfully using his ghost rays to pass the ghosts out of everyone but Mayor Montez. And it's at this point where Maddie arrives in the basement and reveals that she actually has a weapon that it of course enables her to suck various ghosts into the ghost portal, because she has a device that enables her to shoot ghost portals and suck people inside. And sure enough, she winds up unwittingly helping Danny deal with the ghosts with Danny hurling them into the air while everybody else is just sucked into the portal. And eventually, Bullet is the last of the ones to get sucked inside. Although he declares that it isn't over and that he'll be back. And I don't think we see him after this point, so who knows? But of course, it's at this point where obviously Maddie is now trains her sights on her son, because she doesn't realize it's her son. But it's at this point where he realizes he needs to kind of deal with her and proceeds to knock her out with his ghost rays. But it's at this point where Mayor Montez proceeds to grab Danny and proceeds to pulls him up to the surface of the town hall. And Danny tells Walker to let him go. Obviously, it's Walker and Mayor Montez's body, but Walker points out that he's not quite, and they still got one last thing up his sleeve to ensure that Danny is not going to be able to, operate freely anymore. At which point he proceeds to drag Danny out in front of everybody out of the town hall, and then proceeds to make a big play about how Mayor Montez is being attacked by Danny. At which point he runs back into the town hall, and it's at this point where he declares that now his plans are ultimately complete, and that points out that now they'll never actually trust Danny. And of course, Danny is also brought out in front of he was brought out in front of a news people who are obviously broadcasting the whole thing. So obviously Danny being shown as quote unquote attacking on public news has kind of ruined Danny's reputation, and he will probably never be able to operate freely. But of course, at this point where Wulf then proceeds to see that Danny is being attacked, and since Danny has been nothing but kind to Wulf up until this point, Wulf immediately barges into the town hall and decides to face off against Walker and help Danny out. And it's at this point where Maddie recovers from being knocked down and arrives in the town hall as well, preparing to blast Wulf with her thing to send them to the ghost zone. But it's this point where Wulf realizes what he needs to do and proceeds to use his ability. And this is one of the last abilities that we see him demonstrating. But he uses his abilities to harmlessly rip Walker out of Mayor Montez and pulls him into a headlock. And of course, Danny of course realizes what Wulf is planning to do, and that he's planning to sacrifice himself to take down Walker. But Wulf merely responds in English this time that he'll see his friend again. At which point Walker then proceeds to tell Danny that so will he, and points out that now that Danny is now wanted in the ghost zone and nobody will trust him in the human world, so he's lost. At which point they're both sucked into one of Maddie's portable ghost portals from her blaster, and he's obviously visibly upset, and obviously Danny is very visibly upset over the loss of his friend, because obviously Wulf got sucked into the ghost zone at this point. But it's at this point where Maddie then proceeds to declare that now that she's dealt with those ghosts, she'll take care of Danny as well. But then it's discovered that Jack, bless his heart, forgot to charge the Fenton bazooka thing that she's been using to summon ghost portals, and is very angry because she was one blast away from dealing with Danny. And Danny proceeds to decide to take his leave, and with her hollering after him that she hasn't seen the last of her. But of course, he then proceeds to add after he leaves the town hall that of course not. He'll see her at dinner. At which point the episode kind of ends with Danny kind of realizing that he's screwed. He's realizing that obviously now that Walker has essentially ruined his reputation, which means it's going to be a lot harder for Danny to operate and go ghost. But does declare that in the meantime he will still continue to help people. Because obviously obviously it's now over the news that he's obviously public enemy number one now. But does declare that even though everybody hates him, he's still going to help people. But of course, this is this point where we see Mr. Lancer being chased by Jack and Maddie, and of course Mr. Lancer is proclaiming and also swearing, I should mention, using his quote unquote swears that he's not a ghost, and he keeps trying to tell them that. But Jack and Maddie aren't listening and conclude that he is still possessed, so they proceed to chase him. But he also proceeds to point out that he's not going to be starting with Lancer. So yeah, so that's how the episode ends. And I do like the episode because this is an episode where the bad guy wins. Unfortunately for Danny, Walker is successful in his plan of turning the entire town against Danny. So of course, so obviously he made the entire world into Danny's prison, of course. He very much succeeded in his end goal of ruining Danny's reputation as a hero. But, or rather, he made sure that Danny never had one. But, of course, that winds up being the big issue of the episode. Walker wins. And, this winds up persisting for quite a while after this, because even in the very next episode that I remember reviewing, going onward with this, obviously Danny is now public enemy number one, but there is one more person that has now been counted amongst the people who know that Danny is good, and that's Paulina. Paulina saw him save her. He figured out that Paulina was saved by him, and now Paulina kind of knows that Danny is a good person. He knows that Danny is a good guy, and he's actually an evil ghost. So that is now 4 people who know that Danny is a hero. But which is pretty cool, and that winds up playing directly into the next episode we're going to be reviewing, because that's also a thing that happens. But yeah, in any case, that is in fact going to do it for today's review. But yeah, that's essentially how the episode ends. Walker wins. So yeah, that's it. But in any case, that's gonna do it for my review. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter in the description below. Be sure to check out my Discord. Link is down in the description. I want to connect with more people over there, so please go do that. Be sure to go do that. Be sure to go and check out my Twitch. I stream Saturdays and Sundays. Please go check that out. I would appreciate that. And yeah, go do that. Also, be sure and go and check out my Discord. Link is also down in the description. Please go check that out. And then finally, if you want to see, obviously, if you want to see more content from me, be sure to check out the playlist, link in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. Well, actually, the top video is the most recent one of these I did, which was Megas Month, whereas the bottom video is Courage Month, which is a bit more in tune with what we're doing. We're reviewing stuff for Halloween. But in any case, that's going to do it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.